We are Facebook Live from the Fresh Green Room. It's Crystal Darsh, 92.5 Fresh Radio, and Glass Tiger, or half of, 2/3 of Glass Tiger. Alan and Sam, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to be here.
Now, you guys have never done a Facebook Live.
This is our first one,
just like,
I believe.
Yeah, so is anybody watching yet? Come on.
There we go.
There's a crowd here. Anybody who has a question can post it and, ask a question. So hopefully Chelsea will filter the questions. And so welcome. Now, you played last night with Johnny at the Jubilee, and the shows have been sold out for a bit. This is kind of a grueling tour. What do you not want me to ask you? Because I know that you've been doing a million interviews.
How did you get the name Glass Tiger?
Okay.
That was your first question, wasn't it?
My next one was, and I'm going to ask this anyway because it's legit. You guys have been together for 31 plus years. How is this possible still? I'm sorry, I have to ask that question anyway. Yeah.
Well, I would think that, first of all, when we started, we didn't know that 31 years later we'd be sitting here talking about 31 years. So, you focus on what you're doing at that moment in time, the first album, the second album. And even when, I remember hearing an interview with George Harrison when he asked, how long do you think the Beatles will be around? He said, probably 5 years or so. So I don't think you ever consider your longevity when you're starting out. And it's just something that over the years, 5 years becomes 10, 10 becomes 20, and then you look back and here we are.
Was it yesterday, Sean? I wrote yesterday, I've been blogging every day. And it's a marriage, and within any marriage that has a longevity to it, you learn when to gather round, you learn when to back off, you learn how to fight, even though we don't really fight anymore. But even in the early days when you clashed, you have to learn how to do it so that it doesn't end the marriage every time. So we've gotten extremely good at that over the years, and the other thing is that we all care about each other. We're still good friends. Other bands laugh at us because we're like, who's having breakfast and are you ready for lunch? And meanwhile, they're all splitting and going their own ways. So we like each other.
So is it easier now that you're flying and have rooms with fancy toilets than being stuck in a bus? Because I saw that. I saw
that. Blogs.
How do you know that?
Yeah, I talked about how my blog is actually deluxe.
It wasn't just a bidet.
I have a real human hand that comes out and gives me a wipe.
Okay, right. Too much information.
So you've got a little more space, or at least you've figured it out over the years.
We certainly know, after traveling for 31 years on the road, how to travel, how to make it more palatable, comfortable, and that's the one thing I think we're really good at now, is just kind of figuring that out and what we are comfortable doing and what, and it's small details. It's the small details that make the tour go smooth and make it comfortable.
Can you tell the story of your first signing and the leather strap that you tied around your foot? 'Cause I want to hear your version of that.
Well,
and if you guys knew what was going on and what you thought.
Well, the guys, they sort of knew what was going on, but really what it was is we were a really great bar band. Every major record label was after us, which was a great thing, but the one that really wanted us was Capital EMI. And we worked really hard, and they worked hard to sign us, and we thought we had the marriage certificate in our hands. And then I got invited to a meeting that was rather secretive, and it kind of threw me off. And I went down, and the head of A&R at the time had this wacky idea that he wanted to basically break the band up. Not out of badness, he has this thing about rhythm sections. He's an ex-drummer. And so he had this other idea that he was going to take me out of the band. We can never remember whether it was Sam that could stay or the guitar player.
I was sitting on the fence, I think.
And I was just stunned by all this. And so I turned it down. I said no. And he then was like, wow, who would do that? You're broke, you don't have any money, and you're a starving musician, and you're turning me down. And so I strapped this piece of leather around my ankle, and I said, I'm not taking it off until we sign a record deal.
Did he tell you?
I forget how
you might have.
that came about.
Because we were We had a couple of other really close. We're almost knocking on the door.
So we were going through all that, and ironically, we go through all of that with other record companies, and the people that ended up cutting the leather off my ankle were the original ones.
Come back around.
Was Capitol Records.
And that was because you were opening for Culture Club.
Well, that was the, I think the icing on the cake there.
defining moment.
That was it, because we had been in this courtship for a few years doing showcases, and when we got the opportunity, because we were called Tokyo at the time, we weren't Glass Tiger then, and
Because of your accent.
Yeah, and we got this opportunity to open that show as a bar band, really, unknown, and Capitol was in the audience, and that was kind of what clinched the deal, I think.
Yeah, and they called me on a Monday and said, okay, come on down and sign.
So and then there's a picture of you getting this thing cut off your leg.
Right. Yeah. It just became a little joke, but it was my protest that I said, I'll cut this off when I sign a deal.
I love that you guys held out for what you wanted, because I've heard so many, well, we've all heard stories, especially country artists getting stuck in a contract that they can't get out of, and they have to, fulfill how many albums and all that stuff. But
that comes after that's the
Yeah.
next part of the record company.
Yeah.
This was the front end. This was just, I just couldn't imagine this band the way we were and the way we are now. I couldn't imagine somebody saying, well, leave them behind and we'll do this. And it's like, what does that mean? We've been hustling and playing and gigging and working together and writing together. To pull me out of that and take me to something else, it just doesn't compute.
So how did you, or was it a thing at all, to your first album, the title song was a song about a battle. And then your second album is about, obviously, Indigenous rights and so on, like still relevant today, but they're not light, fluffy love songs, and they're the title songs from your albums. So were you guys problem children right off the bat, or what?
Well, and actually, if you look through our sort of songwriting lineage, Thin Red Line, Ancient Evenings,
Vanishing
Tribe, those were all songs that we had created prior to getting signed. Everybody knows us for Don't Forget Me and Someday, and that was when we were told we need to write a couple of singles, so we'd send us to Vancouver. So the band has always had these songs, which I think sometimes get overlooked a little bit. If you're a fan, you're well aware of them. But the essence of the band always had this thread of when Alan heard the music for Thin Red Line, he took it in the direction lyrically for the Argyle and Southern Highlanders, which was an awesome theme and something that we could all get our head around. And the video was just like a mini movie,
Going back to this idea of me wearing the leather and us being unsigned, one of the record labels that had us in the middle of all this was Island Records. And again, we thought the deal is done. The deal is signed. Doug Chappelle had us. And then at the last minute, the Supreme Commander, the famous Chris Blackwell, decides that he wants to fly in from the islands and see this band. So he flies in from Jamaica, jumps in a car and comes up to this little town,
in Bradford,
little bar
Ontario.
north of Toronto. Comes in and place is jammed. All the record companies are still there, but they've all resigned to the fact that we're going to be with Island Records. When we were meeting this man afterwards and I was shaking his hand, something told me he wasn't going to sign us. And what it turns out is that very early Glass Tiger, the songs that Sam's talking about, and had a little essence of what early U2 was like.
Yeah.
Wasn't Don't Forget Me When I'm Gone. It was more like a little more like Sunday Bloody Sunday kind of.
There's a message in here.
Right. Yeah. And so Blackwell sort of said, I'm working with one like this, don't need that one.
Right. Yeah.
And so he passed. And that's sort of reflective of the idea that Glass Tiger, what we were like in those early days.
So they knew what they were dealing with, that you wanted your own music, and if you had a song with a message, that was something that you wanted to sing.
Yeah, I mean, and we've always had, we were told, go to Vancouver, write some hits with this gentleman, Jim Valens, who had written a string of hits with Bryan Adams. So we went there and we did exactly what we were told to do, and we're really proud of those songs, and they certainly launched the career. But when we perform live now, Thin Red Line, Ancient Evenings, and those songs still resonate. And Diamond Sun you mentioned.
This Island Earth is another one.
Exactly. So the message is through there, and Diamond Sun was in the working title it was called African Sun. So there's a version of that, and we turned it into a Canadian thing with the video and the way we treated the video, and that became a real. So there's a thread of that through all the band's music that goes a lot deeper than Don't Forget Me and Someday.
Now that video is filmed in Alberta.
Yeah, Drumheller.
Your wife is from Edmonton.
Oh, research.
We
Yes.
must have a question from a listener, but I want to hear
Is that
about
your
this
wife?
first.
Is she on the phone?
We have a listener saying, what was it like to be with Ali McCoist and Duran Duran
Oh.
during the filming of My Turn?
There
I
you
didn't
go.
catch all that.
What's it like to be with Coisty and Ian Durant?
That's obviously a Rangers
job.
supporter writing in to ask that. Ali McCoist was basically like the sort of Wayne Gretzky of Scotland. Ian wasn't far behind him. Two great soccer players. I'm a Rangers fan. One of the sort of perks of being a popular band in the 80s were that the Edmonton Oilers became really good pals of mine, some of the Toronto Maple Leafs and some of the Glasgow Rangers. So two of them, Ali and Ian, were kind enough to take part in the video for My Town over in Scotland. But I was very careful not to put them in their Rangers jerseys. I put them in their Scotland jerseys.
Let's clarify. It's Rangers
Split the audience.
Football Club, not Rangers hockey.
Yeah, Rangers
Right.
Football
Yeah.
Club.
So obviously our listeners want to know, how did you meet your wife from Edmonton? Is there a story there, or
Uh,
is this your favorite town on the tour?
Yes.
Well, funny enough, I came to Edmonton. Prior to meeting her, I was hanging out with people that she knew. I was hanging out with Gretzky and Messi and these guys, and she knew all those guys, and we never met. We actually met through a blind date. We did a video in Toronto for I'm Still Searching, and the model that was in that shoot, she asked me if I was seeing anyone, and I thought the next question was going to be, would you like to go out for a drink? So I said, no, I'm not seeing anyone. And she said, I have someone you should meet. And I thought, that's wacky. And she set us up on a blind date, and that was it.
That's awesome. So can we talk about the reason why your album is called 31 instead of 30?
Yeah, I know it's an unusual number to. So we were full steam ahead 2 years ago into our 30th anniversary. Big plans, festivals, a tour, new album, new songs, and then Alan threw a little bit of a curveball at the band schedule and decided to have a stroke, which of course immediately put the brakes on everything, immediately to focus on his health. And we said, don't worry about this 30th thing, and we'll catch up when you feel strong enough to come back. And then that was when we let him dictate the schedule from that point onwards.
And so we called it 31.
So 31 is when we got back, and I kind of like the ring of 31, actually.
So are you now an advocate for everyone going to the doctor, or how are you approaching this? Are you?
Well, I'm set. I've done some work with Heart and Stroke. I'm doing some work with a gentleman right now in Toronto. We're working on a kind of platform that basically deals in the idea of prehabbing your life as opposed to wait until it's too late and you're rehabbing. So it's just this idea of if you were to really sit and think about the idea that trauma is going to come your way at some point, it just is. And I'm not trying to be morbid with that, but we're all going to experience these life-altering issues. Hopefully, we'd all like to think it's going to happen when we're 80. But what if it happened when you were 45? What would happen? So, are there connective things that you can put together so that when it does happen or it happens to a loved one, do you know the various, like when we went through it, you're winging it. It's a phone call to Sam from my wife, and then she's saying, will you play
Gatekeeper.
Yeah, really like the gatekeeper. Keep
yeah.
those going. And the other ones, and people trying to get into the hospital, and then financially, dealing with those issues, which for many people it can be a terrible burden. You and I were talking off camera. Just a simple thing like trying to get your license back. Do people know that it cost me $800 to get my own driver's license back because they took it off me? So the idea of prehabbing your life, just a little planning on a just a simple basis. Yes, I like to say to people, are you aware of what your cholesterol level is? Do you know what your blood pressure functions at regularly? But I try not to soapbox it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like that.
So you guys are all eating kale now, which
We're
is really
not
easy.
quite
on
on
the
the kale thing. Yeah. Although I think we have toned it down a little.
Another question for Glass Tiger.
Just a comment. Paula says, you look great now, and I'm happy you were there.
Well, thank you very much.
And then I do have a question here for, they said, Christine says you guys have one of the best voices. Anyone you have want to sing with that you haven't yet?
Well, that's over to you.
I have one of the best voices in what?
Who do you
Who
want
would
to
you
sing
like
with
to
that
sing
you
with?
haven't yet?
Oh, if I could sing with it, well, could they be alive or dead? Is it that kind of thing?
Have to be alive?
If it had been anybody, if I could have sung with anybody in life, it would have been Frank Sinatra. But now that he's gone, if there's someone I could sing with, it would either be Paul McCartney or Annie Lennox.
Say Adele, because I'm sure she's watching right now.
Adele.
We wouldn't say no to
Adele's
that
got one
either.
hell of a
Yeah.
voice, yeah.
How did you decide who, because on 31 you've got some guest singers, Julian Lennon, and obviously Johnny, because you wrote with him and he produced it. But how did you guys all sit down with a list of who you want and map it out or draft or what?
I don't think it was that deliberate. The record, a lot of aspects for this 31 album happened organically. And it started with Johnny and Alan meeting, discussing it, Johnny coming up with the concept of the record, and when we decided the songs and they just let them kind of do the campfire test, which he stripped them down, and then when we started hearing how cool and organic that was, we started talking about, because the whole message of friendship and brotherhood, and these are friends and people we respect in the music industry. Julian, for instance, has been a good friend of the band, and especially Alan, over the years, and one of the first people to reach out to Alan when he went through a stroke. So we immediately said, send Julian a few tracks, if he would sing on it. Alan Doyle, I mean,
Obviously.
the record's got kind of a Celtic flair. So Alan told us a story that first concert he saw in Halifax was, I think it was Glass Tiger. So we thought it would be great to do that. So these things just popped out sort of fairly organically. I mean, I don't think there was any preconceived notions of who these people were going to be. Yeah.
One more question, maybe? Chelsea? I put you on the spot. While she's looking,
Oh, that's great. Keep them coming.
I was in Vancouver during the Olympics, and I can pretty much not hear I Believe without starting to cry, kind of like Oh Canada, so I kind of like you when I don't for that. How did you, so Ellen co-wrote the song I Believe, the theme song for the 2010 Olympics, which is just super patriotic, and I can't even, how did you get in, did you try to think of what it's like to be an athlete? How did you?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't have to think about being an athlete because I already sort of know what it's like to be an athlete with the solitude and the hard work and the dedication. That's where I came from. I knew that, the Gretzkys of the world and the Messiers, the sacrifice that those families put in, putting those kids on the ice at all hours of the morning, and we know what it's like to miss funerals and graduations and birthdays and anniversaries and rehearsals 7 nights a week sometimes. Having a date with a girl was always like they were waiting over there to see when we would finish.
I'm thinking of Beth from Kiss right now.
So
Yes, exactly.
So I just sat at the piano, not that I can play the piano. Stefan Mocchio programmed it into my piano, and I just sat with a cup of tea, and I just thought of the sacrifice and the dedication that it would take to be an Olympic athlete. and it just emoted, I believe, and it came out.
Well, it worked. Do you know what I'm talking
was
about?
bang on.
I,
I mean,
yeah, you can make me cry by.
Yeah.
They should play it at my funeral.
I loved hearing it
Yeah.
over and over. You know.
Yeah, it was awesome. And one more question?
Okay, so it might be tricking into saying a different answer, but they say, hi from Vernon, BC. What is your favorite part of Canada? Maybe
Oh, we'll have to say Vernon now. Well, actually, that's an impossible question, really,
favorite
to
part of
pin
Canada?
to pin down, because you know the one great thing about doing 45 shows in 60 days, coast to coast, is that you know the country is massive and there's so much charm, and you know the West Coast and the mountains is
And it just
beautiful,
ch-
and then the
the
prairies are beautiful.
attitudes change with the surroundings, don't they?
Yeah, and we're going to end the tour in the East Coast,
Right.
And that'll be one massive kitchen party.
Right.
So impossible to pick. A
Absolutely
favorite.
impossible.
Yeah, impossible.
Well, I would say, one more. One more.
follow-up question to
Okay.
that one. They say, okay, now where is your favorite place to perform?
That we have performed? Well, again, I think more of a unique. We love so many places, but some shows stick out.
Yeah. I mean, the Canada Day in Ottawa when we first launched.
Yeah, it's like 100,000
was
people.
like right outside the Parliament buildings. There was over 100,000 people. We performed in the Olympiahalle in Munich with Tina Turner for 7 nights.
And then we performed for 10 people in a tent in Kandahar, and that stands out.
Yeah.
So like that's a very unique, and you realize you're in a place of the world that, you know, no regular civilians would ever be.
My sister-in-law was in Kandahar for a tour, is that what they
Yeah.
call it? And if I understand this right, the Canadians were only allowed beer once a month, or
Yeah.
some kind of ration, and Toby Keith was there, and they skipped the beer so that they could see Toby Keith. So I know that anybody that saw you would have appreciated
And
it.
just so you know that when we're there visiting, we're on the same
Yeah.
restrictions. So it's not like, oh, you get to be guests here and you can, you know, have different rules. When you're there, you're under the same rules.
You're dry.
No fancy flushing toilets for you.
No.
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 Well, I would say get your tickets for the show tonight, but it's been sold out for a while, so
It has.
thank
That's
you
Johnny
so
Reed.
much, Johnny Reed and Glass Tiger, and for the lucky people who have tickets tonight at the Jubilee. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
So don't